In the ancient city of Kano, where wealth and influence commanded respect, there lived a man known throughout the region. His name was Alhaji Musa. People knew him as a successful businessman. He owned cattle ranches, farmlands, filling stations, and properties spread across several states. His mansion stood like a palace, with tall gates, expensive cars, and servants moving in and out all day. To outsiders, Alhaji Musa had everything: money, power, respect, a large family, and 3 wives. But behind the walls of his beautiful mansion was a secret few people knew. There was no happiness. The compound was quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet. The lonely kind. The first wife, Adaeze, spent most of her days caring for her children without much support from her husband. The second wife, Hajia Amina, had stopped expecting affection years ago. The third wife, Hajia Binta, had learned to hide her frustrations behind a smile. Though Alhaji Musa provided shelter, he was known for being strict and distant. Many times, the wives had needs they could not openly discuss. Many times, the children wished their father would spend more time with them. Yet nobody dared challenge him. After all, he was Alhaji Musa, and in his house, his word was law. But destiny was quietly preparing a surprise that would change everything. Hundreds of kilometers from Kano, lived a young woman named Adaeze. Adaeze was unlike most women her age. She was educated, confident, hardworking, and deeply respected by everyone who knew her. Her beauty attracted attention wherever she went, but it was her character that truly made people admire her. She treated everyone equally, rich or poor, young or old. To Adaeze, every person deserved respect. Many young men wanted to marry her. Some came with promises, others came with gifts. But Adaeze was not interested in marrying just anyone. She wanted a man who would respect her mind as much as her beauty. Little did she know that her future was already on its way. 1 year earlier, Alhaji Musa had traveled to the south for a business meeting. After the meeting, one of his associates invited him to a community event. It was there he first saw Adaeze. She wasn't trying to attract attention. She wasn't wearing expensive jewelry. She wasn't competing with anyone. Yet somehow, she stood out. Alhaji Musa found himself watching her from a distance. The way she spoke, the way she carried herself, the way people naturally respected her. For the first time in many years, something moved inside his heart. Something he thought he had forgotten. 4 weeks after returning to Kano, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Her face stayed in his mind. Her voice echoed in his thoughts. Eventually, he made a decision that would shock everyone. He would marry Adaeze. When his relatives heard the news, they were surprised. A fourth wife, from the south, someone from a completely different culture. Many people questioned him, but Alhaji Musa didn't care. For once in his life, he followed his heart. Months later, after several visits and discussions between families, the marriage was finalized. Eventually, the long-awaited day arrived. A convoy of luxury vehicles entered Kano, carrying Adaeze to her new home. At Alhaji Musa's grand mansion, family members, servants, and children eagerly waited for her arrival. Inside the compound, the 3 existing wives also waited, each with different feelings. Hajia, Zainab, hoped the new wife would bring peace. Hajia, Amina remained careful and observant. But Hajia Binta was silent, hiding emotions she refused to reveal. As the gates opened and Adaeze stepped out of a luxury SUV, the entire compound seemed to pause. Elegant, confident, and graceful, she immediately drew everyone's attention. However, as she admired her new home, something unexpected caught her eye. Near a corner of the compound stood a young girl. The child looked thin, poorly dressed, and unusually sad. Adaeze was confused. How could a child, living in the home of one of the richest men in the north, appear so neglected? Then she noticed more children nearby. They looked the same. At that moment, a strange feeling settled in her heart. Something was wrong inside the mansion. Behind the luxury, wealth, and beautiful appearance, there seemed to be a hidden secret. As she looked around, her eyes met Hajia bint. The woman wasn't smiling. She wasn't welcoming. Instead, she stared at Adaeze with cold, unsettling eyes filled with jealousy and resentment. Adaeze had only just arrived, but without knowing it, she had already stepped into a house full of secrets, tension, and mysteries that would soon change her life forever. The morning after Adaeze arrived at Alhaji Musa's mansion, she woke up determined to learn more about her new family. From the outside, the mansion looked like a paradise. The walls were tall, the cars were expensive, servants moved around constantly. But the more Adaeze observed, the more she realized something wasn't right. As she walked through the compound, she noticed several children sitting quietly under a tree. Some wore faded clothes, others had torn sandals. One little boy was sharing a small piece of bread with his younger sister. Adaeze stopped in disbelief. These were the children of one of the richest men in the region. Why were they struggling like this? Later that day, she visited Hajia. Zainab, the first wife, welcomed her warmly. Inside the room, Adaeze noticed old furniture and nearly empty food containers. The sight surprised her. She had expected comfort. Instead, she found hardship. As the days passed, she visited the other wives. Hajia, Amina revealed that household money rarely arrived on time. Sometimes they borrowed from neighbors. Sometimes they managed with whatever little they had. The women had grown used to disappointment. Nobody expected things to change anymore. The only person who seemed uncomfortable with Adi's questions was Hajia Binta. Whenever Adaeze asked about finances, Binta quickly changed the subject. Whenever the wives spoke openly, Binta became defensive. Adaeze found her behavior strange. One evening, while helping prepare dinner, Adaeze overheard two servants whispering. Things were never this difficult before. The house changed years ago. What changed? Adaeze wondered. That night, sleep refused to come. Questions filled her mind. How could a man with so much wealth allow his family to live this way? Where was all the money going? Unable to ignore her curiosity, Adaeze quietly left her room. The mansion was silent. Most people were asleep. As she passed Alhaji Musa's office, she noticed the door was slightly open. Inside, documents covered the desk. Her eyes landed on a large ledger hidden inside a cabinet. The cabinet wasn't properly locked. Carefully, she opened it. What she found made her heart race. Page after page showed enormous amounts of money being withdrawn every month. The figures were shocking, yet only a small fraction reached the wives and children. Someone had been hiding the truth. Someone had been controlling the family's resources. As Adaeze turned another page, she discovered a name written repeatedly beside several transactions. Her eyes widened. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The mystery of the mansion was far bigger than she imagined, and the name she had just discovered would change. The discovery of the ledger stayed in Adi's mind for days. She finally understood why the wives struggled. She understood why the children lacked basic necessities. The problem wasn't lack of money. The problem was how the money was being managed. One evening, Adaeze sat with Alhaji Musa. She spoke carefully and respectfully. Instead of accusing anyone, she focused on solutions. My husband, she said gently, a house can only be peaceful when everyone's needs are met. Alhaji Musa listened. For the first time, someone had spoken to him honestly without fear. Over the following weeks, Adaeze continued to advise him. She showed him where household expenses were failing. She showed him how the children were affected. Gradually, Alhaji Musa began to see what he had ignored for years. Then one day, he made an unexpected decision. He placed responsibility for household management in Adi's hands. The news spread quickly throughout the mansion. Some people were surprised, others were hopeful. Adaeze immediately got to work. Food supplies were purchased regularly. The children's school needs were met. Medical expenses were covered. The wives received their allowances on time. Rooms that had been neglected were repaired. For the first time in years, laughter returned to the compound. The children played happily. The wives smiled more often. Family meals became common again. Even the servants noticed the difference. The mansion no longer felt cold. It felt like a home. Hajia Zainab thanked Adaeze for bringing peace. Hajia Amina admired her wisdom and kindness. Slowly, genuine friendship developed between them. But not everyone was happy. From a distance, Hajia Binta watched every change. At first, she remained silent. Then her smiles became forced. Her greetings became shorter. Her eyes followed Adaeze wherever she went. Each improvement inside the house seemed to increase her anger. She had once enjoyed influence within the household. Now everyone praised Adaeze. Everyone respected Adaeze. Everyone listened to Adaeze.com. One evening, as laughter filled the courtyard and children played happily, Binta stood alone in the shadows. Her face hardened, her hands clenched. And for the first time, a dangerous thought entered her mind. If Adaeze had never come here, the compound celebrated its newfound happiness. But hidden behind the darkness, jealousy was growing, and jealousy was preparing to fight back. That same night, Hajia Binta secretly met someone outside the mansion walls. The plan they discussed could destroy Adaeze's life forever. There is a saying that jealousy is like fire. It begins with a tiny spark, almost invisible, harmless, but if left unchecked, it grows, and eventually, it destroys everything in its path. Inside Alhaji Musa's mansion, that fire had already begun to burn. Ever since Adaeze took charge of the household affairs, life had changed for everyone. The children now ate proper meals. School fees were paid on time. The wives received their allowances without begging. The servants worked in a happier environment. For the first time in many years, the mansion felt alive. Laughter filled the compound. Children played freely. Family members gathered together in the evenings. Everyone seemed grateful for the changes. Everyone except one person, Hajia Binta. At first, she tried to hide her feelings. She smiled when others smiled. She congratulated Adaeze when others praised her. But deep inside, something was slowly eating her heart. Every compliment Adaeze received felt like an insult to her. Every smile directed at Adaeze felt like something stolen from her. Every improvement in the household reminded her that she was no longer the most influential wife in the mansion. One afternoon, Hajia Zainab publicly thanked Adaeze. "My sister," she said warmly, "since you came into this house, things have changed for the better. May Allah reward you." The women around them nodded in agreement. Adaeze smiled humbly, but Binta remained silent. That night, she sat alone in her room. The words echoed in her mind. "Since you came into this house, since you came into this house." Again and again, her anger grew stronger. The next morning, the children ran excitedly toward Adaeze. When she entered the courtyard, "Ajia Adaeze! Ajia Adaeze! Look what I learned in school." Their faces lit up with happiness. Binta watched from a distance. Years. She had lived in this house for years, yet she had never received that kind of affection. For the first time, she began to see Adaeze, not as a co-wife, but as a rival, a dangerous rival. Soon, strange whispers started spreading through the compound. Nobody knew where they came from. Some servants began hearing stories, others heard rumors from neighbors. People started talking, quietly, carefully, secretly. Maybe Adaeze is only pretending to be kind. Maybe she wants control of Alhaji's wealth. Maybe she has a hidden plan. The rumors spread little by little, like smoke before a fire. Most people ignored them. After all, Adaeze had done nothing but help the family. But rumors have a strange power. Even when people don't believe them, they begin to wonder. And once doubt enters the heart, it becomes difficult to remove. Days passed, then weeks. The tension inside Binta continued to grow. One evening, Adaeze organized a small family dinner in the courtyard. The wives sat together. The children laughed. Even Alhaji Musa seemed happier than usual. As everyone enjoyed the evening, Binta forced a smile. But beneath the smile was bitterness. She felt invisible, overlooked. Forgotten. That night, while everyone slept, Binta remained awake. She stared through her window into the darkness. Her mind was restless. Her jealousy had become something much bigger than anger. It had become a plan. Slowly, she covered herself with a dark veil. She quietly opened her door. The compound was silent. The guards sat near the gate. The family slept peacefully. Carefully, Binta slipped through the shadows, past the courtyard, past the gardens, past the outer gate. She walked until she reached a lonely spot outside the compound wall. Then she stopped. Someone was already waiting there, a figure hidden in the darkness. The stranger stepped forward. Binta looked around nervously, then she began to speak in a low voice. Whatever they discussed that night was dangerous. Very dangerous. And before the meeting ended, the stranger handed Binta a small folded envelope. Binta accepted it. A slow smile appeared on her face. For the first time in weeks, she looked satisfied. Inside the mansion, everyone slept peacefully, completely unaware that a storm was coming. A storm that could destroy everything Adaeze had worked so hard to build. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are not strangers. They are the people we welcomed into our lives, the people we trusted, the people who smiled at us while secretly waiting for us to fall. Inside Alhaji Musa's mansion, the seed of jealousy that Hajia Binta had planted was finally beginning to grow. Days after her secret meeting outside the compound wall, strange stories started spreading. At first, they sounded harmless, small whispers, small doubts, small suspicions, but day by day, the rumors became louder, more dangerous, more believable. People began hearing stories about Adaeze, stories that were completely false. Some claimed she was secretly sending Alhaji's money to her family in the south. Others claimed she was trying to turn the children against their father. Some even whispered that she planned to take control of Alhaji Musa's entire wealth. Nobody knew where these stories came from, but somehow, they continued to spread. Soon, servants began talking, neighbors began talking. Even distant relatives started asking questions. At first Alhaji Musa ignored the rumors. He trusted Adaeze after all. Since her arrival, the family had become happier. The children were doing well. The wives were living comfortably. The household was finally peaceful. But rumors are dangerous. When repeated often enough, they begin to sound like truth. One evening, a distant relative visited Alhaji Musa. The man spoke for nearly an hour. Nobody knew exactly what was discussed. But after the meeting, Alhaji Musa looked troubled. For the first time, doubt entered his heart. That same week, more accusations appeared. Anonymous messages arrived. False documents surfaced. Stories were carefully planted where Alhaji Musa would hear them. Everything seemed organized to be a coincidence. Meanwhile, Adaeze remained completely unaware. She continued caring for the family. She continued helping the children. She continued managing the household honestly. She had no idea a trap was slowly closing around her. Then came the day everything changed. It happened during a family gathering. Several relatives had come to visit. The wives were present. The children were nearby. Even some respected elders sat in the courtyard. Without warning, one of the visitors stood up. He pulled out several papers. Then he made a shocking accusation. He claimed that Adaeze had been stealing money from the household. The courtyard fell silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Adaeze stared at the man in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" she asked. But the accusations continued, one after another, each more shocking than the last. The papers were passed around. People began whispering. Some looked confused. Others looked disappointed. Across the courtyard, Hajia Binta lowered her head to hide a smile. The plan was working. Adaeze tried to defend herself. She explained. She answered every question. She begged people to examine the facts. But emotions had already taken over. For the first time since she entered the mansion, people looked at her differently. Not with admiration, not with gratitude, but with suspicion. And then something happened that broke her heart. Alhaji Musa remained silent. The man who once defended her, the man who trusted her, the man who promised to stand beside her, said nothing. Adaeze looked into his eyes, searching for support.com, searching for trust.com, searching for belief.com, but all she saw was uncertainty. The silence hurt more than the accusations. Tears filled her eyes, not because of the lies, but because the person she loved seemed unsure of her innocence. The gathering ended in chaos. People continued whispering. The atmosphere became heavy. Embarrassed and heartbroken, Adaeze returned to her room. For hours she cried. She replayed every moment in her mind, every sacrifice, every act of kindness, every effort she had made to help the family. Had it all been for nothing? Late that evening, she made a painful decision. Perhaps it was time to leave. Perhaps she no longer belonged there. Quietly, she packed a small bag. The same mansion that had once welcomed her, now felt cold and unfamiliar. As darkness covered the compound, Adaeze walked slowly toward the main gate. The guards watched silently. The courtyard was empty. The night air felt heavy. Calm. When she finally reached the gate, she stopped. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her heart was broken. Everything she had built seemed to be falling apart. Then suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Slow. Steady, getting closer. Adaeze froze. Her hands tightened around her bag. Her breathing became heavy. Who was coming? Was it Alhaji Musa? Had he finally realized the truth? Or was it someone else entirely? Someone whose arrival would change everything. Sometimes, the truth arrives late. So late that the damage has already been done. So late that apologies can no longer erase the pain. And sometimes, the people we take for granted leave before we realize how much they meant to us. The footsteps behind Adaeze grew louder. Her heart pounded. Tears still filled her eyes. Slowly, she turned around. Standing a few steps behind her was Alhaji Musa. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The night was quiet. Only the sound of the wind moved through the compound. Adaeze looked at him. The same man she had trusted. The same man whose silence had broken her heart. Alhaji Musa looked different. His face carried regret. His eyes carried guilt. And for the first time since they met, he looked like a man who was afraid. Afraid of losing someone important. My wife, he finally said. Calm. Please don't go. Adaeze lowered her eyes. The pain was still fresh. You did not believe me. Her voice trembled. When everyone accused me, you said nothing. Alhaji Musa had no answer. Because she was right. He had failed her. That same night, something unexpected happened. One of the servants arrived with important information. The servant had witnessed a secret meeting. A meeting between Hajia, Binta, and the mysterious visitor. Fearful of what might happen, the servant finally revealed everything. The anonymous letters, the false documents, the rumors. The lies, the entire plot. Everything pointed back to one person. Hajia Binta. Hajia Binta. The next morning, Alhaji Musa ordered a full investigation. By afternoon, the truth was impossible to deny. The documents were fake. The accusations were false. The witnesses confirmed the story. The servants spoke. Even some of Binta's closest allies admitted what had happened. The entire mansion was shocked. For days, people had blamed an innocent woman. The woman who had sacrificed the most for the family. The woman who had brought peace to the household. When confronted with the evidence, Hajia Binta could no longer deny the truth. The courtyard fell silent as everyone listened. Some were angry, others were disappointed. Hajia Zainab wept. Hajia Amina could not believe what she was hearing. The children stood quietly, confused, heartbroken. Alhaji Musa felt ashamed. The guilt weighed heavily on him. He remembered every moment Adaeze had helped the family. Every child she cared for. Every problem she solved. Every sacrifice she made. Yet when she needed him most, he had doubted her. That evening, he walked to Addie's room. But her room was empty. The wardrobe was empty. The suitcase was gone. Adaeze had left. For the first time in many years, fear entered Alhaji Musa's heart. Real fear. Not fear of losing money. Not fear of losing power. But fear of losing someone he truly loved. Without hesitation, he made a decision. A decision that shocked everyone. He would go after her. The next morning, Alhaji Musa gathered the family. He announced that he would be leaving. The wives stared in disbelief. The servants exchanged surprised looks. The children became emotional. You are leaving? Hajia Zainab asked. Alhaji Musa nodded. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. And I must fix it. Days later, he traveled south. The journey was long. Through cities. Through villages. through highways stretching across Nigeria, until finally, he arrived. Adaeze was staying with her family, far away from the mansion, far away from the pain, far away from the rumors.com. When she saw Alhaji Musa standing outside the family compound, she was surprised. For several moments neither spoke. Then, Alhaji Musa did something nobody expected. The proud businessman lowered his head and apologized. Not a short apology, not an excuse, a genuine apology, from the heart. Adaeze listened quietly. She listened to every word. She listened to every regret. She listened to every promise. And for the first time since leaving Kano, she saw sincerity in his eyes. Weeks passed, then months. Alhaji Musa remained in the south. The longer he stayed, the more he realized something. Peace was not found inside expensive mansions. Peace was not found in wealth. Peace was not found in power. Peace was found among people who genuinely cared for one another. Eventually, he made another shocking decision. He would not return permanently to the mansion. Instead, he chose to build a new life near Adaeze and her family. A simpler life, a happier life. Back in Kano, the mansion slowly changed. The laughter disappeared. The warmth vanished. The joy that Adaeze had brought left with her. The large buildings still stood. The expensive cars remained. The wealth remained. But something important was missing. The feeling of home. Years passed. The story spread across towns and villages. People spoke about it during family gatherings. They told it to their children. They told it to their grandchildren. And even today, many still remember the story of Alhaji Musa, the wealthy Alhaji who had everything, yet almost lost the one person who truly transformed his family. The woman who taught neglected children to smile again. The woman who brought dignity to his wives. The woman who turned a mansion into a home. Years later, villagers still tell the story of the rich Alhaji who left everything behind for the woman who taught his house how to become a home. And whenever people hear the story, they remember one lesson. A house can be built with money, but only love, fairness, and kindness can turn it into a home. The end.